We are delighted to have Brandie Ekren, who is the new Traverse City Light and Power Director. And she hasn't been here very long, so I'm really pleased that she's agreed to come and speak to us, and we can learn more about her plans for what Light and Power is going to do, and then you can ask questions of her afterwards. I did watch the board meetings where they were doing interviews, and she would have been my pick.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's a very warm welcome and a nice vote of confidence, especially when my bosses are in the audience. So that's pretty cool. I'm really happy to be here. I appreciate your patience. Actually, I've had an invite and an opportunity to come and visit you for a while. I haven't quite made it just yet. And I'm still in transition moving from Lansing to Traverse City, and hopefully I'll be here soon. But I ran into June at the Climate Action Summit, and she had commented that I think Ann just pretty much just gave up. I said, don't give up on me. I do want to visit, absolutely. So thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here, and hopefully this won't be the last time I visit. Hopefully I'll be invited back after I chat. So again, I'm really happy. As I was trying to prepare and really kind of think through what I wanted to talk with you about, I think are you getting a little bit of a glare or can you hear me okay? Or no, that works out okay? I really want what I have to share to be extremely relevant for you, but definitely authentic for myself and Traverse City Light and Power. So what I thought I would do is I'll start talking, at least share a little bit about myself. If you don't know more about myself, I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing with respects to our climate action planning. I'll talk with you a bit about what that actually is and what we're doing or what our hopes are for it. And then I hope to have a conversation. So I kind of indicated that I'm looking forward to being more of a discussion and more of a listening for me, as opposed to me doing so much of the talking. But just really briefly, I'm originally from Detroit, so southeastern Michigan. I went to Michigan State University and kind of stayed. I went there for undergrad and went there for law school, and I eventually ended up practicing law. I did, before I actually landed in the utility world, I worked with employment, benefits, compensation, a lot of the not so fun, exciting stuff of benefits. And then I had an opportunity to do in-house corporate work for the utility at the time, and that was back in 2004. When I joined the utility, which was Lansing Board of Water and Light, my goal really wasn't to join a utility. Quite frankly, I didn't really know exactly too much of what the legal aspects might involve, but I knew I wanted to work with a group of people that were focused towards a goal, and if I could factor in my legal knowledge and work on that, that's what I would do. I actually got promoted in that career, I would say, relatively early. I started in 2004, and in 2008, I got promoted to general counsel. At that time, I'd been practicing probably maybe only 5 years, and really for a position like that, you really want somebody to be practicing for 10 plus. My boss at the time was the previous chair of the Michigan Public Service Commission, and he told me that I could do that job, and that if I had any questions, we would learn along the way. And so I had a very steep learning curve in my career. I had people that supported me in my growth, and I just I grew to pretty much enjoy it and love it. And actually during that first period of time, those first 4 years, I didn't even really dive into the utility specific stuff. I just really kind of dealt with what they hired me for, which dealt with labor, employment, and compliance stuff and commercial contracts. And so in 2008, that was when that utility was really their first opportunity to become their own market participant. the power pool for their joint action agency had expired at the time, and they wanted to enter the market on their own. And so it was kind of a steep learning curve for all of us. And so it was an excellent opportunity for me to kind of just continuously grow. And so during my tenure there, I picked up a number of responsibilities. Some might make sense, some didn't really make sense. But I did have an opportunity in 2019 to make a change in my career. And it wasn't because I didn't enjoy my job. I loved the general counsel work that I did. It was something I was very passionate about. I love my people. I enjoy risk management. I love planning. And I had an opportunity to, one of my colleagues was retiring, and so I took a lateral move to be the executive director of strategic planning and development. And in that role, I got exposed to things that were different nuances from what I had previously been exposed to. I had been very familiar with the compliance aspect, the energy planning, all the PPAs, public power purchase agreements, all of those things. But this time, I was the business owner, and I was responsible for the utilities' strategic direction and their energy planning, and then also working with their large commercial industrial customers. So while it was similar material, it was another growth opportunity for me, and I really enjoyed it. It was an amazing opportunity, big accomplishments. And when I say big accomplishments, meaning quite honestly, just some really great serendipitous project opportunities that presented themselves. And so having the opportunity to come and transition to a new life with Traverse City Light and Power, definitely come with some experience of, having my own bumps and bruises as I grew through the industry that I do love, I enjoy. I'm very passionate about it. I'm able to come into a setting where there is passion that probably exceeds, to some extent, I think if it doesn't match, it exceeds my own. And so we are, I would say, I think we're having fun. I mean, I think my team is having fun. And what we're really kind of focused on right now is taking that concept of integrated resource planning and making it work for us and our community. And so I'm going to talk with you a little bit about that. So, and if I repeat or say something you're already familiar with, I apologize. But traditionally, investor-owned utilities and file what's called an integrated resource plan. Well, they'll basically do modeling. They'll look at what's going on in the industry, in the environment, responsibility-wise, and they'll file that with the local Michigan Public Service Commission. Municipal utilities, they don't have to do that, but they still do integrated resource planning. I did. The difference is that it's utilized for rate making. How do we set our rates? And then how do we do our strategic planning? How do we set our goals? And so, it still isn't blessed by the Michigan Public Service Commission, but it does still have some of the same elements. What I happen to like about it from a municipal or municipal perspective is that it's usually a little bit more open of a process. And when I came to Traverse City Light and Power, that was one of my priorities was updating and working on our integrated resource plan. And so as the team and I kind of started talking about all the things we wanted to cover, which included how are we going to reach our 100% renewable goal? Everything's going on in the industry right now. There's more electric cars, so how does that impact how much energy you use? So the decision was made to pursue it from a climate action plan perspective. Now, there's communities, there's cities, there's universities, there's organizations that do climate action planning. For us, it's going to be climate action planning for the utility, and most specifically, it is what is the utility's role when it comes to the environment, and how does it impact the business model? And that is in essence what we're looking to derive at the end of this. So we kind of started our process with public procurement, where we are engaging consultants to give us some industry insight on energy efficiency, demand response programs. I'm confident I'm going to miss several other things. A bit electrification, electric transportation and heating. That's the industry insight. Now, how does that differ from a traditional IRP? In a traditional IRP, you kind of just do a snapshot. You look at what the market is doing. For us, we want to engage with the consultants and kind of get a sense of, we know what the industry is doing. We know what our goals are. How does that impact what we're going to do as a business? And so it's a little bit more drawn out. It's a little bit more engaged. And so we have it kind of set up in 2 different energy sets so that we're getting this industry insight. And hopefully, if the team isn't too spread too thin, is able to engage with the consultants so it's more than just something or a report that we get that we put on the shelf. And so that's one piece of it. The other component of it is us being able to do what I would consider a really engaged stakeholder engagement. And the type of stakeholder engagement is a little bit more than just submitting comments, but it's an opportunity, one, to educate the community on what we're doing, what we're looking to accomplish, provide some industry insight, because I find that if we all are starting with the same definitions, it's so much easier for us to have the same conversation. And so help educating our community, and then getting feedback on ideas, taking those ideas and then doing what is the traditional piece and factoring them to the modeling component of it. There obviously are a number of things, technical things that go into energy planning, but being able to have I would consider a more engaged stakeholder engagement will enrich it and helps the community be behind really what's the value of public ownership, the value of having your municipal utility. And so we're hoping that the stakeholder engagement will take a couple different forms. Obviously, anyone can communicate however they want to communicate, send emails, maybe drop a note. But we do like the idea of having a public open house and maybe even having some of those consultants there at some point at the tail end to answer questions. I always say put them through the ringer. We're paying them good money, ask them good questions. And so it's a good opportunity. The other piece is, if there's an opportunity or need to even have some, small group engagements. I would consider this to be a very similar one, even though I'm doing most of the talking right now. But this is, this would be a similar type of setting that I would envision. And really, once we do this, we do our modeling, we come up with a team plan, then we will present it to our board so that it is approved. Now, the board has recently, this past year, established a sustainability ad hoc committee, which to me is an excellent opportunity for staff, those of us who are running the company and the utility and the operations, to engage with our board members and bounce ideas. And one of the things is looking at this climate action plan before it goes before the board. Now, little hint, it's also I'm hoping it helps me make certain it gets approved at the board. But it's I'm really excited about it. It's something that I think is going to launch us forward as a community. There are so many amazing things going on in northern Michigan. There's a lot, I'm reading the article about back in 2013, having a net zero goal for a habitat community. Now everyone's talking about net zero, right? As of the past couple of years. But, now the rest of the world is catching up. The question is, what does that mean for us in the utility industry? And how do we get on board? You see utilities making promises and wanting to do that. I actually genuinely believe that they're sincere. The question is how do we bring each other along the way for that journey so that we kind of stay engaged? So that's a little bit about the climate action plan. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. I wanted really, to be quite honest, just to really have a discussion with you and either answer any questions or get ideas.
Lines of communication with the larger utilities like consumers and DTE, and if so, is the relationship usually beneficial or competitive?
So the quick answer to your question is yes. We have lines of communication and engagement with both DTE, our investor-owned partners, I'll say that, which includes, right now, DTE, as well as Consumers Energy. Let's not forget your local co-op. We got a co-op around here too. And so we do have a relationship with them as well. And, they actually, what I would say, are partners in the endeavor when it comes to energy planning. I think, if you want to engage and have questions, that's always been my experience. I've interacted with, people from both DTE as well as consumers in the past. They've been open to engaging with us as well. When it comes to competition, it's all about the customer, right? And so what we're hoping to do is maybe come up with an understanding so that as we engage and we deal with, customer issues and we're trying to compete, because at the end of the day, we still are trying to compete for those megawatt hours. And so I would be remiss to say that we don't have a little competition going on, but we are really entering an era of collaboration. There is a conference that happens I actually think this year it might be is it Shanty Creek, or sometimes it's at Mackinac. It's the Michigan Energy Providers Conference. And that conference is actually a combination of people all across the industry, and it includes not only municipal utilities, but investor-owned utilities as well. So we are in the room together, we are talking, we are sharing information, even though sometimes we may be in a competitive situation. And then we do have, I would say, through some of the municipal joint action agencies, sometimes the investor-owned utilities will actually come and do a presentation as well. Yes, sir.
Yes, I was already bugging a couple of the board members about this. So I put solar up on my house last year, and I was told that TCL&P had a limit where you take the last 12 months of your bills, remove the two highest, and then 80% of what was left was the maximum solar that I was able to install. And so it limited the amount of solar I could put on my house, even though that was all historical data. And I installed a car charger, geothermal. I'm going to get induction cooktops, and so my energy rates are going to go sky high. But I was limited by this historical data. So, can we change that?
So what you're referring to, if I'm gathering you correctly, and I'll let my board members keep me in check if I'm deviating too much, it's probably our net metering program. That's really, and I'll explain what that is.
Well,
so
I know what net metering is. They're used to, because I had it downstate.
Yeah, but the limitation is your credit, like how much you benefit from the bill.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think in terms of looking, there are a number of utilities. I think the investor-owned utilities is not immune to this, or the only ones doing this, but they're looking at how to make the net metering program structured so that it incentivizes customers to invest. Right. So the quick question.
So there was a net metering law in Michigan.
Yes.
When I did the rate down the state. But it expired, and they didn't renew it, so that it's not net metering anymore. What I buy off the grid, I buy at commercial, retail rates. When I put it back onto the grid, I get pennies on the dollar. And I'm not worried about that part as much. It's just, you're limiting the amount of solar I can install. And my energy, my electrical needs are going up. So.
It's a limit on the value that you can invest in right now. I understand. Yeah,
and it
absolutely.
Could be on that climate action discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to have to be more aggressive on rooftop solar. It's probably part of the conversation we're going to have, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the nuances of the credit here, the value there, what makes more sense, those are obviously important details that hit your bottom line, and how much you pay. Right, at the end of the day, we are mindful not only to what we're impacting and how we're impacting the environment, but it also includes our affordability as well. So those are driving considerations when you're looking at programs like that.
Sure. I don't think my meters ever went back to this. I don't think, with the amount of power I pull, I don't think I ever put anything back on the grid. So, anyway.
Yeah, but I think,
I have a question that goes along with that. So many of the townships are making their zoning rules so that it practically negates what you want to do with solar. They're making you put it in the backyard or invisible someplace. How do we change minds to realize the importance of this.
Yeah, that's not in my backyard, right? We're all fans of it, but we don't want to have it in our backyards. So I mean, I would say, because it's something I'm very sensitive to when you're citing solar projects, and it's that site control, is I think it's advocacy. You know, when you vote people into office, you communicate to people in terms of what your passions are and what your need is. My thought is that is something that becomes a priority to allow. Because what ends up happening is that it does block a lot of development. I've worked on a number of projects, some really, I would say some significant projects, where site control and being able to have the property and utilize the property is very difficult. Now, one key thing just to say is I also think that there's a little bit in between in terms of how you engage customers when it comes to property and how you utilize their property. But the zoning ordinances and things like that, I think that's where you advocate for being able to support it. You know, I do recognize it is a touchy topic, though, when you have someone telling you what to do with your land. You have your own property, your own land. However, the individuals that are setting your ordinances won't be able to represent their constituency unless they understand what the constituency wants. And so that helps them at least get closer towards balancing. But I think I would say advocacy for certain. And it's advocacy, I'm going to be frank, it goes even beyond just the local level. It goes to the state level as well as the federal level. One of the agencies that our utility is a member of is the American Public Power Agency, and we have put together a joint resolution that basically kind of memorializes wanting the federal government to take it serious, provide incentives, provide education, and to allow things like that to occur a lot easier. Keeping in mind that, you know, it still is something that is sensitive to in terms of being able to tell people how to control their property.
As you look down the road in trying to realize these aggressive goals to switch to much more renewables, what are some of the barriers that you see or that you think about, whether it's just the availability of options or things in infrastructure or anything where you're trying to think ahead to what can be done now proactively to try to smooth the way?
Well, probably the most immediate barrier right now are supply chain issues, quite frankly. That's probably the one that's front and foremost on my mind, predominantly because as I'm going out to procure power or I'm working with agencies, it's hard to get a quote to figure out what we can afford if there are some supply chain issues. I do believe that's a short term though. So that's probably the most immediate barrier right now. The other component, and I don't really know if I would say it's a barrier or a hindrance, it's an opportunity to do more planning, which is why we're spending more time on the business model component. Predominantly because the utility industry has been functioning in a certain way since the 1800s. That's really when public power became into operation. And that business model has pretty much continued and existed so much where certain things that are happening in the industry just aren't fitting in right now. There's a book, actually I'll recommend, and it's by John, I think it's Menchek, and it was published last year, and it is about transforming the business model, and it's Edison to Elon Musk, especially the concept behind it. And what that book talks about, and I'm still working through it, so I haven't finished it yet, so don't ask me about the ending, but that book talks about is it goes back to the basics. It's the beginning of where we were with the industry, what the industry has to do to change, to keeping in mind that we're not only talking about climate, but we're also talking about people who have jobs, people who stimulate your local economy, and how does that factor into the big picture. And that is, I would say, the opportunity. The opportunity is, how do we figure out a way to encourage rooftop solar or distributed generation and allow it to still work for the utility where they're still accomplishing their goals and still staying in business? My thought is that the industry is changing and I want to stay in the business. And that really is the challenge before us, if you would call it a challenge. But I don't really think it's something that's a negative. I think it's an opportunity for us to step back and rethink how we're doing business. And that's going on right now, I would say, within the industry. That book is probably the best example. And I'll share the information on that if you're interested. But what I do like about the book in particular is that it talks about the historical beginnings of the utility industry. It talks about what's going on right now, and then it talks about what has to happen in order for the business model to change in a way that is truly sustainable. And when it's sustainable, I'm talking about more than just the climate. It's the communities, it's the economy, and it's the social engagement. I hope I answered your question.
Sure.
Okay.
Along those lines, my understanding is in California, the CEO of whatever the biggest electrical utility is, I forget the name of it, his incentives are built around efficiency. So it's not, he doesn't get incentivized on selling more electricity. He actually gets incentivized increasing the efficiency of his customers. So is there any talks or work on that here?
That's what we're trying to do, but we want to be able to figure out how does that work moving forward. We're shrinking and it's so interesting. We talk about, I've gone through a rate hearing before, obviously not at Traverse City Light and Power, but I've gone through a rate hearing before where we talked about we have to increase our rates, and the reason why is because our consumption has gone down. And so it's like, well, goodness, we're trying to save the environment. So what you're telling me is that because we're saving the environment, we're going to increase our rates. So the quick answer to your question is yes, that is definitely under consideration. But the reason why it's particularly under consideration is that will likely increase. You will definitely see a push for being able to use your energy much more efficiently. The question will be, as the industry and everything electrifies, what does that mean? If you look at the International Panel on Climate Change, and you look at those big offenders, right? You guys probably know better than me, the big offenders, in terms of the climate and CO2 impacts, agriculture, transportation, utilities, and then human behavior. So the question becomes, what is the utility going to support? If we support electrification, that probably means people are going to increase their demand, but we want it to be efficiently done so. So that's the reason why we're kind of looking at different ways of being able to still maintain ourselves as a business and that revenue while still impacting the emissions, the carbon output. So it's under consideration. That's what I want to say. Yeah.
So I'm a Cherryland Electric customer, and I just read in my County Lines magazine the other day that the executive director there, who's been there for 20 years, is retiring, right? We often bumped heads on social media because I appreciate the fact that Cherryland Electric is 50% carbon neutral, meaning they get a lot of nuclear. And one of the things that I was always bumping heads with this outgoing executive director was, what's the urgency behind addressing climate change? Because we know that climate change is urgent. It's super urgent. And the response I was always getting was, we're about reliability, we're about cost, we're about whatever. And us environmentalists in the room are like, but climate change is coming like a freight train. So what will be, going forward, your attitude towards addressing climate as quickly as absolutely feasibly possible, even so much as doing things like more education to the public, justifying the fact that we need to make changes, justifying the fact that your rates might go up for a short time while we negotiate the climate situation. Because the longer we wait, winning slowly means losing, right? So we can't win slowly, we've got to attack this full on. So what are you going to do about it?
So I think my first step is the planning, and that's what we're working on with the climate action planning. But I want to also kind of acknowledge a couple facts. One, you happen to, and and actually, I think Cherryland is a excellent co-op utility, and so this comment at all has nothing to do to distinguish ourselves from them. But if you are with Traverse City Light and Power, you are with a utility that is very aggressively passionate about the climate and the environment. It's not a matter of when; it's like a matter of now. And so, reliability, safety, resiliency, those are still very important things. But what we want to say is that they can still coexist with having a healthy climate, a future for your children, as well as being able to ensure that the fancy renewables, the electric cars, are not just reserved for those people that are the most wealthy. So these are things that are already key sentiments that are within the utility and the community that you're living in right now, at least. And so I think that's the first step. Being able to, I would say, leverage those and kind of leverage the momentum and organize it so that it is to what end in mind we have is going to be really the key. I would consider myself a climate enthusiast, but I'm also very open to being able to understand to what end. What is the end accomplishment of what we're doing, and then what is it that has to be involved? But we still can't sacrifice safety, reliability, and resiliency. And I don't think that they're mutually exclusive things. I'm confident they're not mutually exclusive things, as a matter of fact. The question becomes, have we done the planning to ensure that they're not mutually exclusive? So I hope that's responsive. But it is something I believe in personally. I work for a company that believes in it. I have employees that believe in it. I mean, I'm not trying to change the culture of a workforce with a lot of the things that we're working on. I feel like I have an army behind me. Yes.
I live in the woods, deeply in the woods, and so I can't have solar. And luckily, Cherryland has a community buy-in program.
Mm-hmm.
Does TCL&P have that? And if so, are you planning on expanding it?
Community solar is definitely on my list of things to explore, but let me ask my board members, do we currently have a community solar?
We're a joint participant in that exact project.
Gotcha.
You mean with Cherryland?
We did it together.
Okay.
And then the scaling is only a question of demand. We have other ways we can expand as much as the community chooses.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Haven't you reached a limit that, I mean, if somebody wanted to buy in tomorrow, could they?
I believe so.
I
Last I
thought
heard.
we had more expansion that had to happen first, but I'm not well versed. Thank you for.
We should find out, but last time the staff did a report on this, from Light and Power's perspective, there was capacity opportunities.
Gotcha.
And then
Yeah.
looking at where to put it next but there was a place they already located.
I see.
We should double check, but
A double check.
I believe there's still capacity.
Okay. Yeah. The only thing I would foresee is just maybe the logistics of getting panels. If it need that would be, again, that's that supply chain issue that that's kind of plaguing me a little bit. But my general understanding is that it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm another Cherryland customer also, although I guess I'm a Light and Power customer also because my partner is Ann, and so I do Interlochen, and she lives here. I believe.
So you can keep us honest.
Huh? Yeah. Part of, and I haven't kept up like you have either in the last few years. There are two things that are different here. You're talking about the community solar, and then you're also talking about things like net metering.
Yes.
Net metering is when you have your own panels on your own property and you are trying to sell the electricity, to the either Light and Power or Cherryland. The community is when they have the first one. Actually, Cherryland was the first one in Michigan to have a community solar project, and that was it's out at their headquarters out there in Blair Township. And they had, I think, 72 panels, and Ann's got one, and I don't think, a lot of these people here have, they buy the panels and you get a return on that. They also expanded that a few years ago, I don't know, 5 years ago perhaps, it was through Spartan, which Spartan is out of
Wolverine.
Cadillac.
Yep.
Yes, it's part of Wolverine. It's Cherryland does not make any electricity, or virtually little right now. They get their electricity through Wolverine. Wolverine gets it through Spartan. And the interesting thing is, some of the same people sit on the same boards. Okay, so it's all Spartan is a co-op of co-ops. Okay, and Wolverine is a co-op of co-ops. Now, one of the arguments we keep getting, okay, Len, this is one that, we're talking about. We want to see more of this green energy, solar, wind, okay, that produces no carbon at all. It has no big risk like nuclear. Cherryland keeps claiming we're, 61%, carbon free. Well, only 19% of it is actually good electricity. That's solar. But now, the big story you get is we want to keep it reliable and affordable and all the rest of this stuff. If you own your solar panels and you want to do net metering, they dropped that, I think it was about 4 years ago, Cherryland did. They were paying you paid them 11 cents, they paid you 11 cents. So whatever you used, you got back what you paid. They dropped that. They were trying to drop it to a third or a fourth of that. They were dropping it down to like 3 cents, and we fought, and they dropped it down to, I think, 6 cents. And the rate now is going up to 12 cents per kilowatt. So you're getting half back. They pay you half what you pay them, which is a loss. The thing about it is, okay, then they keep throwing out this stuff. Well, it costs more for us we can't be subsidizing the solar panels and things like that other people are putting in their houses. That's their big argument. The subsidy, that's what they keep saying. That means it sounds like, well, in order for you to make electricity or to put in solar panels or to put up windmills is costing the utility more money. Well, if it's costing you more money, and that's why you got to be careful so we don't raise our rates. It was about 4 years ago, Light and Power was looking to get, because we got this commitment that we're going to get green renewable, Light and Power, and I can sit and listen and talk to and write letters and everything else to Light and Power. I can't do it to Cherryland. They're a closed organization.
Oh, I didn't know
I'm
that.
a customer. I cannot sit there in a meeting or anything like that.
Okay.
I cannot do that. But when they said they wanted to do this and they wanted to buy some more green energy, they've got the solar panels up on 72, and they got some more solar panels now. They're getting electricity, I think, from, or maybe it's, well, I know Light and Power is getting from 72, and they were getting it from the windmill. Along came Spartan to the Cherryland, or the TCL&P meeting, and says, we will sell you green energy, okay, coming from solar and wind, not for 12 cents, not for more than that. They were going to sell it for 4 cents. Now this is the one that I, as a ratepayer of Cherryland, am subsidizing. I am paying for that. If I want to get on it, I can buy one of those panels and they'll give me a few cents back on everything. I could pay for it ahead of time. Maybe I'll get it back after 20 years. But they're going to give that electricity to Light and Power for 4 cents a kilowatt. And I wrote a letter and I spoke up there. If they're going to give it to you, to the city for 4 cents, why can't I buy it for 4 cents? You know, I'll buy all the green power you want if it's going at a cheaper rate. That's what, in other words, they're not giving it to you at a discount. They're giving it to you, and they're still making money at 4 cents. So let's, just, that's what I say. So now, I would like to see Light and Power saying, wait a minute, why aren't we investing in more windmills? We don't have to pay Wolverine, we don't have to pay Heritage, we don't have to pay anybody. If we put it in, put up the windmills, that would be the best thing, put up more solar panels on our own property. And now, if you could sell it for 4 cents, that means all of the Light and Power customers should be able to get it for 4 cents, because if they can sell it for 4 cents and make a buck on it, then we should be able to sell it for 4 cents and not even have to make a buck. We're getting our money back. So I don't know, that's just, that's the thing I would like to see you doing, working towards, hey, this should be ours, not buying wrecks from Indiana or something like that, or shipping, right now we're shipping nuclear power in from Palisades and Illinois and other places like that, so, anyway, so much for my ranting.
Well, not a good, I am completely following you, but I got a follow-up question, just
Yes.
quick question. Would it matter if the renewables that we invested in were here physically and you saw them, or does it matter if it's somewhere else?
It matters if it's here. One of the next big question you always get when you say, well, we're getting renewables, is the grid cost, okay, the transmission cost. So when we make electricity, we're making a gigawatt of electricity down in Illinois, we're probably losing a few, probably megawatts of electricity power before it gets here. So that's a waste. We're paying for something that nobody uses. I had an electronics course back in college, and the instructor always talked about, that electricity going down those wires, it's flip-flopping, it's because it's AC current, and that's, there's line losses, okay? All that does is heat up those wires so those little bird feet stay warm in the winter. Okay, so you see all the little birdies on there. So, but, yes, no, closer to home is the best thing, it should be.
Okay. No, that makes sense. No, I understand. I envision that the discussion in terms of who is building and who is selling is probably going to kind of kick up as the revenue or the tax credits for those programs are expiring over the next couple of years.
Windmills and farms are ideal. We should have more of them. I mean, but people don't understand how well the farmers make out with these windmills. The first one we put in, up here by McBain, they put up 29 windmills there, and the first guy I talked to him, he's the first one they put up here in Michigan. Farmer, he's got his cows running around underneath this windmill and everything else. I went there because people are complaining about how noisy these things are. It's no noisier than the wind. When the wind's blowing 40 miles an hour, you can hear it in the trees. When it's blowing through a windmill, you can hear it, yes, but it's not annoying or anything like that. But he was getting $4,000 a month for having a windmill in his backyard.
Not a bad deal.
$1,000 a year. Does that help a farmer? And we have a lot of farms out here that could be using that. So, anyway.
Yeah, Michigan has a great wind profile.
Yeah.
Blaze?
I think this might dovetail from some of the stuff David was saying. And I guess I have a lot of questions, and I'll try to, and maybe we'll say it in two parts. But June and I have talked about, the idea of having like a microgrid, like more locally oriented. And that's kind of talking about instead of transferring things from far away, having more produced locally. I guess first is, what are your thoughts on that kind of approach? Like, do you feel like it makes a difference whether it's coming from here or coming from far away? I know I've heard a lot of arguments in support of microgrids, but I definitely don't know a whole lot. And then for two is that, to my knowledge, it's easy to hear these ideas, on websites or in books and things, and it's hard to find case studies, and there's only so much that the markets can allow people, operating on their business models. And also with everything being so interconnected, it's also hard, maybe for one community kind of like try something that's more of a novel, a unique idea when others around aren't necessarily ready to do the same thing. So the first question is, what are your thoughts on that kind of whole thing? And then for two, do you think that TCE Light Power as a place, both in terms of what they're able to do and in openness and culture, to do something that's pretty new and different within the community that might be really pioneering?
Yes, I think this probably might be one of the same questions to some extent. I mean, really briefly, in terms of local versus somewhere else, I think there are pros and cons for both, right? And so, as you have more companies, businesses really wanting to be a part of a sustainable environment and climate, that's picking up. I understand it's been a tough fight over the past, what do you say, Earth Day started years ago in the middle school, grade school, but it is picking up. And so the question, you have a number of people who want to have it and they want to be able to see it. They may not be able to have the output that they want, but there may be a combination where you have a little bit of both. You've got something that's local that you see, and then there's something that you can maybe import in if the economics work. It's not too expensive. That we don't. It's kind of like you don't want to chop off your nose to spite your face. Is that how it works? So that's my thought in terms of local. I always ask that question because I have some people who they are very passionate. They just want to make certain that they really encourage the renewable growth. I don't care where it is. I need to know what's happening somewhere around the world because we're in one world. I'm breathing more than just the air that's right here in Traverse City. I'm breathing the air that's in Illinois, so to speak. So you see there's a number of different pieces. Now, microgrids is a different consideration. So the quick answer is, one, I'm extremely excited and very passionate about microgrid opportunities. Today, microgrid opportunities and microgrid projects, they're not done for the return on investment. They're done for their demonstration value and the opportunity to learn. The federal government is now making available this is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to pursue funding to help fund those projects so that they are not on the ratepayers' back. For most investor-owned utilities, they have been very savvy enough where they take dividends to fund these projects, whereas with your municipal utility, we don't gain a profit or a dividend to reallocate something. So this is going to be a great opportunity for us to explore what those projects are. They're good for a couple reasons. One, like I said, it's test technology, where you have a combination of the renewable, a control system, as well as a battery storage, but it also could potentially increase reliability. That's where I think they can coexist. So if you think about a neighborhoods potentially being their own microgrid, as opposed to one neighborhood going down, it doesn't take over the whole system. That is the opportunity. That is the reason why these things can coexist. But it does take a leap of faith and an investment that says it is of value, not because it's the cheapest dollar amount, but because it's going to move us further in that direction. My utility is very passionate about that. My people are anxious and hungry to pursue and explore opportunities. That's one of the things that we kind of put in for our public procurement. Like we want to know what are potential microgrid opportunities. What do they look like? What makes sense? It might be a matter of starting out with a series of nanogrids. And when I say a nanogrid, that may be just like a building, maybe a community center where you do a demonstration on. And so there's an abundant amount of opportunities, and they can be configured in a number of different ways. And now is the time to capitalize on it because there's potential funding that can kind of help us get there.
Most modern systems actually use really sophisticated batteries. They don't put anything onto the grid unless they can sell it for a profit. Maybe a solution on that is just, if you're going to install however much you want, if you never put it back onto the grid, fine, install as much as you want and store it on on site in your batteries. So the second question is not related to that. There is a nuclear plant in Michigan, I think it's Palisades. It's being decommissioned because no one picked it up. Do you know anything about that?
I feel like that's consumers. It's like consumers nuclear plant, yeah.
But they're saying that if it actually, and I may be a little bit late here, I heard that if it fully decommissions and shuts down, it will be impossible to restart. And, I'm not a fan of nuclear, but, I believe we've cornered ourselves to the point where we have to keep that as an option on the table in order to make the transition to zero emissions. So I don't know if TCL&P even has an opportunity to step forward and participate in that.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on nuclear energy. In TCL&P through its other joint investments, that's not part of, I don't think that's part of our portfolio. I can double check. So I can't, it's really hard for me to really speak to that. But I can completely appreciate, the concern when, there is a lot of generation that is being retired, within the next couple of years. And so that is a question for the industry right now. How are we going to meet our industry needs, knowing that traditional form, or I say dispatchable or generating units, yeah, you could have a renewable baseload too, by the way, but I won't get there. But those things are changing, and so how to fill those in with variable resources. Such as the wind and solar, maybe hydro. It depends on if you see hydro as considered a renewable source. I mean, that's its own discussion, what is considered renewable. But I can definitely, it's something that we are feeling right now as a whole, because even though we may not have an investment, and I'm not an expert on nuclear, it factors into what Michigan has going on in terms of meeting its energy needs. So, sorry, I can't be a pro on, at least, I don't even know who to ask about this.
I think that's already been, I know it's in the works, I think it's already been decommissioned.
Okay.
Palisades, there was talking, somebody was putting in, I forget, a big chunk of money, the state or something, to operate it, but they said they couldn't restart it now.
Okay.
It's already gone past that.
Yeah, I and the only reason why I thought it had retired too was because one of my old bosses was chair of the PSC when it retired.
It might be operating, but it's not enough money to redo it, bring it up. I mean, because so they're gonna just turn it off.
For groups like NMEAC and its members and community members who want to be engaged and to help some of these solutions and innovations kind of happen, and to maybe advocate for it, how do you see the best ways people can engage with TCL&P Power?
I think the best form of engagement is really asking us what clarity you need when it comes to these type of industry things. I think one, helping us have that same language and discussion is the first step, because then, and that's the reason why the stakeholder engagement I think is important, because it's kind of helping us understand the nuances. It's a very, obviously the industry, a lot of industries are complicated, and clearly I'm biased and I'm going to say mine is the most complicated. But the thing is I think asking us the questions and asking us to clarify where there is not clarity and giving us an opportunity to do that, I think is the first step, because it helps with our engagement. And then once we have that, then we can figure out how are we moving forward together. What are, you look at the government, not really the government, but you look at the state mandate for energy efficiency programs. That I know was going to sunset, and the utilities are making a decision on whether or not they're going to continue it and how they're going to continue it. That was really a great opportunity to start educating people. Unfortunately, it had to be something that was kind of mandated, enforced. Well, I guess if you're in a municipal utility, you say you weren't forced to do it, you were just you voluntarily decide to do it. But I really think that's the first step, because one of the things that I kind of learned that part of, and I'm going to use the word environmental justice, is that being able to ensure that there is energy literacy and usage, and making certain that our schools are starting to get the curriculum. We were talking about that they need, and it's beyond the postdoc, the post-bachelor level. This is looking at in the grade K through 12. I was talking with a representative from the Intermediate School District, and she says, they're trying to develop a curriculum right now that is focused on the industry as well as the environment. And what type of things would be useful? And there are utilities across the country that are engaging with that conversation with their educational institutions, with their local groups, because they want to pick that up as their mantle as, okay, I'm going to do community education. And this is part of how we do it. So I think the first step is asking us what you need clarity on, and then give us the opportunity to clarify, and then we can kind of plan moving forward.
Can I add?
Yes, sir.
I serve on Brandie's board, but I have been there for 13 years, and one thing NMEAC was really valuable after the times have changed was showing the organization that there was community support for making investments in clean. Well, now you got every single board member out there is literate in climate change and motivated by climate change to be on that board. We don't need your help convincing that board to pay attention. That we cross that bridge. Congratulations, you did it together. What we're going to need, and it's serious, that was a success. That was your success as much as ours. But now we're going to have to get people to think. I thought it was great that I put on community education. You can't just look at electric utilities in a vacuum. You can't just look at automobiles in a vacuum. You can't just look at land use planning in a vacuum. And I think we're going to help the community get educated on this issue, but I think you have to lead on these things are intertwined. And think about density and land use planning in concert with electric vehicle planning, in concert with generation planning. It's your only shot to get to these ambitious goals. So I think there's this collaborative opportunity to, I don't want to be condescending, but educate our community on these interconnections. People love to look at them in simple binary terms, and you're cerebral folks who don't do that. So linking land use planning with electric planning is something we have to do more of together in this community, I think. This is an excellent area and environment to do it. I think JT's right. I mean, this is a board that's extremely, I'm going to use the word progressive, extremely progressive and ambitious. And so it's kind of fun and exciting to work with, but there still is there's a lot to do, and there's, it's a chess game.
On that note, just to add one more thing. On the podium right there in the front, it says Network Northwest. There's a collaborative effort of different sectors in the region to kind of work together in that kind of interconnected way. Is TCL&P engaged with Networks Northwest in some way? Like, I don't really know what the state of it is right now. I know in the past there's more conversation than there is now. But I was wondering if you might be able to know anything or share anything about that, relationship there.
I don't think, except for the fact there's a mutual respect and awareness and some economic development, but I just think it's factually historic. I don't think we work with Matt McCauley closely on energy issues. The intersection we mostly has been on economic jobs and sort of the green jobs relationship to the community economic growth. There probably is something there. I just don't think historically there has been much intention.
I did, when I first started, and I'll have to go, now I got to go look at my checklist. I had a list of organizations, and I don't even know if they were necessarily formal official organizations, but there were a group of communities that were, I would say, crossing their traditional boundaries, whether they be the tribal nations, the educational institutions, some other, and that wanted to collaborate. And I'll have to go back and look. I feel like I've got a couple groups, but the point that I'm making on this is that I think the opportunity to collaborate is present. The question is how do they collaborate? I've had a couple, like Michigan Tech University has like reached out, and they knew what we were doing, and so they wanted to know, well, how can we help? What can we do to help? Is there a program? Is there something we can come up with a student group? And so that has been really kind, you know, because you have people that are reaching out, offering to do something, but at the same token, they're open to participating however way that makes sense. But I'll double check. I'm still learning all the groups.
Give her time. Yeah, you got it. Well, if that's it, I do want to thank you for your time and your energy. NMEAC being a low budget, don't go away.
Okay, I'm here.
A low budget operation, can't give anything except little gifts. So
thank
one
you.
for you and one for your assistant who has been so nice to answering us.
Okay.
And these are for me. I don't know,
these are
they're a
mine?
little bit old, but
thank you.
there's some ideas in there that. So
Okay, well, thank
Can
you.
you
I
take it
appreciate it. Gosh, that's very generous. Thank you. All right.
And I'm sure we'll have you back.
Okay. All right.
We'll give you time, though.
Okay. Give me a month.
A month. Before you leave, there are cookies on the back table and lots of odds and ends to pick up. Take whatever you want back there, and we're glad to have you all here. I'm going to end this meeting as I have ended practically every meeting since David Millarch gave me a little essay that really struck me in the heart, and it has stayed with me, and there are some copies back there, but I'm going to end this meeting with that, and it's called My Great-Great-Grandchildren Won't Let Me Sleep. Planetize the Movement. It's 3:23 in the morning, and I'm awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. Ask me in dreams, what did you do while the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing. All the mammals, reptiles, and birds were all dying. Did you fill the streets with protest when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew? So thank you all for coming, and I wish you a safe and healthy summer and year ahead. Stay tuned. Thank you.